please give a very warm welcome to Tim Munden from Unilever.
I have to say, walking on to another one bites the dust is potentially, this must be some kind of leadership challenge. My day started with my son saying, "Dad, you look unusually smart." I thought, that's building me up nicely, son. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to go and give a presentation in a brewery." I don't know if you have 17-year-old sons, but his answer was along the lines of, "You've given up trying to organise whatever in a brewery, and you're going to go present there instead." So today's just been one large kind of builder, which is great. Now, I'm going to talk about leadership development. I'm conscious that there's some companies in this room, many who have a deep history of building leaders and leadership, and I don't think we have all the answers. But we do have a very particular way of doing this, which I think links to our purpose as a business and our history and our origins. And I want to kind of just unlock that theme a little bit, because I think leadership has to be rooted in where you are, who you are, and where you're going. Our business started over 100 years ago, and one of our British founders, a man called William Lever, later Lord Leverhulme, founded a business upon the purpose of making cleanliness commonplace. He lived in Victorian Britain, which was a dirty place, and in Victorian Britain, dirt killed you. His idea was, I can create a business which helps people to live cleanly and then live safer, longer lives. Now, if we wind on 100 years, out of that original purpose, we've built a business that 2.5 billion people touch every day through these kind of brands that you'll recognize. But the world, although cleanliness no longer kills you in Britain, the politics will get you, but the cleanliness is probably not a problem. In many parts of the world, of course, cleanliness is still a problem. And in fact, many other things are a problem. In fact, millions of people live without sanitation. Millions of people live without fresh water. 1 in 10 of us is obese, whilst 100 million don't have enough food. We have climate change that threatens the future of the world. And so whilst cleanliness is not the only issue, and some parts of the world have moved on. In fact, 2 million children a year die from diarrheal diseases. So cleanliness is still killing people in other parts of the world. And so we've reshaped our purpose to make sustainable living commonplace. And for the last 10 years, this has been the kind of way we've encapsulated the purpose of our company, to make sustainable living commonplace, which we believe is the way that we can, if you're looking out 30 years, there'll be 9 billion people in the world. We have to embed sustainable living if we're going to find a way for 9 billion people to live well. And that's basically the orientation and the purpose of our business, to solve those issues and to meet those needs. Now, if you're thinking this is a bit unusual from a FTSE 10 company, or are you kind of running a charity or a company here? We're running a company. This is a business, and this is a chart from our investor relations presentation that our CFO used. This is the way we present our very, very investable case. On the left is our purpose, to make sustainable living commonplace, anchored in 3 beliefs. We believe that companies with purpose last. We believe that brands with purpose grow, and that people with purpose thrive. And we have good data for that. The brands that we have that are most purposeful, that link to a need and purpose embedded in society of the users, grow faster than the brands that are less clearly purposeful. We have clear evidence that the brands in our own growth, 60% of our growth comes from the brands that are most purposeful. So we know this works. What this coming towards leadership, though, what this demands is a very different way of running a business. So if you're running a business that is explicitly purposeful, that is about bringing around systemic change in the world, you have to run a business with a multi-stakeholder model. This is not just about we sit as a business with walls around us and we go to our market through customers and that's about it. That's not going to generate change. Generation of change means you have to work with partners across societies to transform the whole system. So, for example, to give you an example of waste, for example, if you're thinking about how do you transform plastic and what happens to plastic, you have to work with local governments, national governments, NGOs, and the communities themselves, the waste pickers involved in it, in order to try and transform that system. We believe that if we do that, we will get superior financial performance. And in fact, we believe that the only way to get superior financial results is if you run a business that is sustainable and purposeful. What has this got to do with leadership? It demands a different leadership. One of the things we know about leadership is that it's situational. I think we've known this for decades and decades. The situation you're in determines the kind of leadership that you need. And the kind of leadership we need, therefore, is changing radically because the situation we're in is changing radically. What do I mean by that? So let me take people first. Our business is 54% millennial and Gen Z. Now, whilst I think it can be exaggerated, the difference, there are some things that these generations really want. They don't really want to be managed. They want to be led, they want to be inspired, they want to be fed opportunities and experiences. That changes how leaders need to behave. The organisations we're in are changing. I think those of us, as Bill kindly pointed out, I've been working for Unilever for 26 years, and when I joined, and I think until recently, many of us in big organisations thought an organisation was a bit like a wedding cake, with kind of layers in it and hierarchy. This is breaking down very, very fast because whilst that kind of organisation was a very logical solution to the world of the 1980s and 1990s, it gave us stability, it allowed us to build big global companies. Now that stability actually slows you down. So the shape of organisations is changing to become much more networks. And in fact, as I said earlier, the multi-stakeholder model means that the network is not just Unilever. We reckon that 2.5 million people actually work for our business. There's 139,000 of them who come to work on a Unilever employment contract. There's probably 2.5 million people who are just as much working for Unilever. And then, of course, there's all those partners I was talking about. This is now a huge network. The kind of leadership that enables networks is not the same kind of leadership that enables big structures. If you're leading and managing from structure, you focus on position, you focus on authority. If you're leading in a network, you focus on influence, you focus on purpose and impact and relationship. It's a very different way of leading. And purposefulness, I think, is an important one I want to pull out because I think, as I say, the generation coming into our workplace, the Gen Zs and millennials, are explicitly purposeful. But frankly, humanity is purposeful, and people of every age want to be purposeful. And I think our organisation, if we're going to deliver that purpose of making sustainable living commonplace, we need purposeful people. And as I said, we believe that purposeful people thrive. So we need leaders who are comfortable to lead with and from purpose. 47,000 of our employees have been through a process of discovering their purpose. So we basically have a workshop that we run ourselves for each other, which helps people to come to some kind of formulation of what their purpose is, and we try and put that at the heart of the relationship between the individual and the company, career development and learning. We need leaders who are comfortable having those kind of conversations with individuals and with teams. Again, this is a very different kind of leadership. And opportunity is really about this opportunity for systemic change. The skills, particularly that our business leaders need, our general managers, to drive systemic change are not the same ones as when we used to work in a much more structured, old-fashioned business. So these are the leadership challenges. But I thought this would be really dull if I just stand here and talk to you. So this is your moment to share a bit of your challenge. So if you pull out your mobile phones, if you haven't already been looking at Facebook, much more interesting than looking at me. So pull out your phones, go to menti.com and put in this code. The code's gone. Can we just have the code back? There it is. Okay. 793386, cosmic phone number. And you've got a few characters in there, 120 I think, to put in what is your leadership challenge. So mine has been about people, purpose, organisation, opportunity. What is the challenge that your leaders face in this disrupted world? Here we go. More inspirational than directional? Absolutely, we have that one agreed. Complexity, scaling culture. It's interesting because, of course, there's a direct connection between what leaders do and the culture that you build. The unknown, not having the answers, trying to move fast to disrupt industry. Emotion tends to overcome ego. In fact, we're going to talk about that. Attracting, retaining talent, perfectionism. I think that links to kind of the middle one of knowing the answers. Fear of change, change. Balancing client obligations versus team, so getting that bigger perspective. Mindset. Time. We're going to come back to time as well. Rapid growth and talent. Fantastic. Keep them coming. We've got 52. How many people in the room? About 100? Some of you are still thinking. Changing perceived successful ways of doing things. Very good. We're going to come to that as well. Fantastic. Okay. So we've got some things about speed, about change, about mindset, about agility and flexibility. I think we actually have a very, very similar set of challenges. So let me talk a little bit for a minute. We'll come back to this because we're going to have a whole beautiful set of answers from this. But let me, if I can just come back to the charts, explain a little bit about how we're trying to deal with this. And then I'm going to ask you another question at the end. So faced with this reality that we had, could I have the next? Oh, it's me, isn't it? There you go. Faced with this challenge, we, about 3 years ago, started thinking about what is the kind of leadership required now. We talked to young leaders in our business, we talked to experienced leaders, we talked to thinkers and influencers around the world, and we came up with a new approach and new language for talking about leadership. And the starting point of our approach to leadership is that there's an inner game and an outer game. So whenever I hear people talk about leadership skills, I wince slightly. Because whilst there is a skillful component of leadership, if we only focus on that skill-based component, we focus on the outer game of what leaders do. But the entirety of what leaders do is shaped by the inner game that they have, what is going on within us, how we show up. And the things that we want leaders to do these days, a lot of the things you put on there, how do we manage the mindset of agility? How do we take the big picture? How do we inspire? How do we have the flexibility to give up old certain? These are not skills so much as capabilities that rest on who we are as human beings, that inner game. And we felt that a lot of leadership development has been excessively focused on the outer. In Unilever, it's been the same. So we explicitly wanted to call out there are two components. There's being and there's doing. There's how you show up and there's what you do when you show up. And so we started framing for that. By the way, we found that to be a radical opener for a much deeper conversation about leadership, which I'll come back to in a minute. The question then is, what are these inner game components? We call these our standards of leadership. The goal is obviously to make sustainable living commonplace. And so we have 3 capabilities in the inner game, 4 in the outer game. I'm going to pick just on a few of them that we think are particularly important for driving transformation. The first is purpose and service. If you want a purposeful business, you need purposeful people. And as I say, 47,000 of our employees and all our senior leaders have been through a process of identifying their purpose so they can bring that purpose explicitly to work. Most Unilever people, if you bimble into the room and you're in a room full of Unilever people, most of them will introduce themselves by saying, hello, I'm Tim, I'm the Chief Learning Officer. My purpose is, in my case, to create lasting change for good in the world. It's becoming really right at the front end of our culture. The reason we put service in there is because purpose is not quite enough. We have to understand that leadership is an act of service to the people being led, as our business is an act of service to the world in which we work. We can only work and run a business with the license and the support of the communities in which we are. And that mindset of service is critical. If I skip to the outer game for a minute, we have consumer love. You hear all these kind of expressions, consumer orientation, consumer centricity, which is so cognitive. This is not how organizations are going to win in today's world. We talk about love. Love, an intimate and passionate concern for the people who we serve and how they live and their problems and the solutions we need to bring. Water, air, cleanliness. It's about love. And if you want love out of the organization, you need to have this ethic of service in the leaders. So purpose and service is our starting point. Why is that important in transformation? Because when you're leading people through enormous change, question number 1 in the heart of the people being led is, do I really trust you? Do I really want to come on this journey with you? And the next question then is, well, actually, who are you? And what purpose does is to make the inner person more transparent, more available, more accessible to people. So the reason we teach people this approach of come to a simple sentence which articulates your purpose is it opens the door to very many deeper conversations. I say, I want to create lasting change for good in the world, and people then have a way to start asking Tim what he's about, and we have a place to start a conversation. So purpose, being explicit about purpose, being transparent about purpose is probably the most foundational thing we feel if you want to take people on a journey, particularly a journey of a business that wants to be purposeful and transformational in the world. The second of the elements of our standard leadership model is personal mastery, always bringing your best self. Before I became Chief Learning Officer, I was an HR business partner. I was the HR business partner in our UK business and a number of global businesses and in North and South America for bits of our organisation. And one of the things I realised when we started to think about leadership was that we've been solving a lot of behavioural problems with organisational solutions. So a lot of big organisations end up having matrices and different structures, and you have a unit responsible for this and a unit responsible for that. Those units have a problem getting on, so we create a little team who's responsible for managing the interface. Organisational solutions for behavioural problems. The behavioural problem usually being that the leaders involved are not managing their emotions, managing their ego, managing their motivations, managing their values, and not bringing their best self. This also is where we require our leaders to manage their well-being, all part of personal mastery. And I'll come back in a minute to how we try and develop that, but that's the core of the idea. We have got, as leaders, a fundamental responsibility to bring our best self, to bring the best emotions and show up the best way we can. And we should stop using organisational outer game solutions for inner game issues. Being a leader is about bringing your best game. The third one then is about agility. And by agility, we mean being constantly curious and courageous. Why curious and courageous? Well, curious, I think we heard from Darren why, a world of exponential change. But one of the things we're underpinning in agility is the confidence in leaders to change their own ways of doing things, to give up old certainties. As was kindly pointed out, I've been in business 26 years, I turn 50 next year. I have a storehouse of experience. And often we think a storehouse of experience is a good thing, and of course it is in many ways, but not if it's unthinkingly used. There are things that I learned along my journey that are no longer true. There are ways of motivating me which no longer work. There are things about the world which are no longer true and effective. So we have to be willing as leaders to give up old certainties, and that's really hard. We have also to be willing to give up our plans. A plan we made on Monday could be absolutely wrong by Wednesday. And leaders who aren't willing to say, you know what, things have changed, let's change the plan. Or, you know what, I was wrong, let's move on. So agility is all the things you think of in enabling organisational agility, but it's more deep than that. It is the willingness to be agile in yourself about what you know and the decisions you take and to move with the world around you. Leadership is no longer done from a static place in structure, it's done from a fluid place in network. Those three things anchor, we think, a powerful, different approach to leadership. What we've discovered about it is that what we're really building here, I think, are the two deepest frontiers of leadership. Purpose, and how we engage people purposefully in work, but also awareness and presence. Awareness and presence. How can leaders actually be in the moment that they are? We're distracted 48% of the time. I'll say that again, because half of you missed it. We're distracted 48% of the time. How can you lead if you're not present? How can you lead if you're not really present with people? How can you understand a situation if you're not really there? And the facts are that we're not. We also know if you take out a mobile phone in a meeting and you put it on the table, trust immediately drops. Why does it drop? Because you've made your engagement conditional. I am talking to you so long as this thing doesn't ping, beep, or ring. It's conditional, and trust deteriorates immediately. We know that people have less intimate conversations when there's a mobile phone present. I don't mean intimate in that sense, I mean intimate in the personal and revealing things about yourself. We know that that's an issue because coming back to the generations in the workplace, they want real conversation. They want to be managed, want to be led, inspired, and encouraged. So what we're discovering as we go through this, that we're opening up two frontiers. How do we help leaders lead from and with purpose? How do we enable leaders to be aware of what's happening in themselves, of the moods they have, the state they're in, to manage that, but also to be really present in the situations they're in, fully present. Interestingly, what I see happening is that we, in leadership development in Unilever, are being taken to the places that many of our people are going outside of work. You know, the retreat business, the personal development, the deep development industry is booming. People are hungry for deep meaning. And I find that what's happening in our leadership development is we have to go to some of the same places. I'll come back to that in a sec. So, if we're trying to develop leadership in a very different leaders in a very different way, you have to actually go about leadership development in a different way. You can't get different leadership out of the same old techniques. I wanted just to show you 3 ways in which we're trying to build leaders differently. And when I say build leaders, this model of behavior that I've set up, the standards of leadership, are actually for everyone in the organization. Because we believe that in a networked organization full of disruption, everybody has to lead. But we choose different slices of the organization to try and approach in different ways. And the starting point for us in trying to shift our leadership was to take the top 2,500. In the past, when we've made a shift in how we do leadership development, we've taken very small strata. Maybe we've taken a few years to get through the top 500 in this painful, creeping process, all of which just reinforces hierarchy. The really senior ones get 4 days, and next level down get 3 days. And if we're still interested in it after that and got any money left, then someone else gets a 2-day. And then if we're really bored, we'll just stick it all online and hope for the best. I mean, it's utterly kind of counter exactly everything we want to do about leadership. If leadership is no longer about structure and hierarchy, don't reinforce structure and hierarchy when you're developing leaders. So we've taken this huge slice of 2,500, and I know that also leaves people out, but believe me, it's a less hierarchical way. That's really 3 layers of our organization, and we're putting them through a 2-day event, which is entirely experiential. There is not a single PowerPoint chart on display in this entire program. Explicitly, because what we want to get across is that leadership is an active experience. It's about your being, and it's not about kind of sitting there cognitively taking on all this kind of information. And of course, as we as learning professionals know, experiential learning trumps any other sort time after time. So we've created this kind of approach of people basically playing, reflecting their way through a 2-day program around our standards of leadership. Our business in India made this magnificent model which actually lights up. Which I thought was extraordinary. Not relevant, but just extraordinary. So, having said all that, then, we do, of course, have to give people access to this stuff at scale, and so there is a lot of online content. We use a learner experience platform called Degrees, which 60,000 people have access to, and about 40% of those people use it monthly. So it is the way in which people engage with learning. And so we've created online assets we call the Leadership Gym, because what we're also trying to get across to people is leadership development is not turning up to something and then going away for 5 years and coming back later. Leadership development is the ongoing study and reflection of how you can be the very best you can be. It's about personal mastery and agility. So we created this thing called the gym, and I have to say I've been blown away by how many people want to use it. 46,000 people going to this, finding they're very, very carefully curated resources, as we all know in this business. Just sticking stuff up there doesn't work. It's about understanding how people use it, how people want different things, and we stick it up and we reflect on it constantly and we improve it. So in the most engaged functions, which actually are HR and IT, interesting thing about the IT function is the hunger to learn is not far from the surface. And if you put a great learning director in there, as I have, Chris is sitting in the back blushing, you can get some fantastic traction. So the second thing is you have to send the message of leadership development is an always-on thing and support people accordingly. And then the third piece of this is the leadership, in a game of leadership retreat. I want to come to partnerships in a minute. We run this with a partner called Potential Project. We've put 250 leaders through this, and this is a radically different way of developing the inner game of leadership. People turn up for 24 hours at our leadership development centres. We run 2 residential centres. We get them to turn their phone off and put it away, and every other electronic device, and for 24 hours, they're device-free. We then have a conversation about leadership, about their inner state, the mind, the heart, distraction. What happens in their daily lives? What are the defaults that they're working to that may not be helping them? And teach them techniques of how to manage this. I can't handle the demand for this event. The hunger in leaders to be helped. Someone put up there about time. Time is the biggest challenge our leaders face. And the feedback we get from this retreat is, nothing's actually changed in my job, but I feel I have more space. And because I have inner space, how I'm showing up to my people is different. So this is a radical thing. I think we're taking leadership development with our partners, as I'm sure many of you are, into spaces that in the past learning teams have gone, oh, that feels this feels almost near spiritual. Yes, it is. Because the human being has a spiritual core. I don't care what you call it, but we can't help but acknowledge that human beings have consciousness and present and heart. And I think as leadership development practitioners, we either embrace that or we decide it's all about skills and let them do it in their own time, but they will go and do it. I'd much rather we brought our leaders together and created a movement of people who are getting this and switching on to awareness and presence and purpose in themselves. So I thought maybe we could make this a bit experiential and we could try one of the techniques that we use in the retreat. Are you up for that? Okay, yes, let's do it. So we're going to do just then maybe just a couple of minutes of a form of mindfulness. Do you want just to kind of sit comfortably, uncross legs, probably usually more comfortable. So the foundation of our inner game retreat is mindfulness that we usually base on breathing. There are a million forms of mindfulness. It's not one thing, it's basically a whole toolbox. But breathing is a very nice way to start because I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but one of the things that human beings all have in common, at least the ones who come to leadership programs, is they all breathe. If they stop breathing, that's often a problem. Okay, so let's just connect with our breathing. So you're going to just shut your eyes, is probably easier. Connect with the breath. You'll notice it, of its own, entering and leaving your body. Just follow the breath with your attention. Breathing in, be aware of the breath. Breathing out, be aware of the breath. Just try and keep your attention on breathing. Thoughts will come into your mind. Don't be concerned. Notice your thoughts. Let them pass. Just come back to paying attention to breathing, in and out. Notice the distractions. See them, let them pass, and just come back to paying attention to breathing. Everything's fine. Any thoughts, any feelings, notice them, come back to breathing. Very good. Just come back to the whole room. How was that? So here's the key question. What's different in you now than 2 minutes ago? Calmer? More relaxed? Focused? Any thoughts? What's different? More present. So the key question really is, more equipped to lead, to meet what's coming, or less? More. Because we're open, we're poised, and we're ready. And that's what we find our leaders are saying. in significant numbers is when I learn some of these techniques, I'm better able to manage my mood, my emotions, my presence, and I feel like I have more time and more space. This is a gift. And you don't have to change anything in your organization. By the way, you probably do need to change stuff in your organizations. We shouldn't not do that, but this, I think, is a real help. So I'm conscious of the time. One last point, and then I've got a question for you, and then we'll do any other questions in the time we have. What I've also discovered about trying to go on this journey is you can't go on there alone. I have a very small leadership development function for an organization of this size. I have to work with partners. And working with a group of partners that's consistent and with the approach, people who really get it and want to come on the journey with us has been made a real difference. This group on the right is the group who came to our event we ran for our key partners in Singapore. We've run them in London. And building that group has been fantastically important to us. You can't just go out to anyone on the market and think, I have a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. If you want to transform leadership, my experience has been you have to be clear on what you mean by it, consistent in it, keep bringing those messages, relevant for the different leaders you're talking to, and to do that, bringing around you a group of people, of partners, individuals and companies who can help you to go there. So wherever somebody turns up, this is the deal they make, is whenever anyone in Unilever calls them, they promise they'll turn up and they'll use our language. They'll apply it to their approach, but they'll use our language. That's hugely powerful. It stops the confusion of different suppliers coming into different places with different language. In our organization of our size and complexity of 100 countries, that's really difficult to do. This group make it possible. The interesting thing that then emerges is they're saying to us, well, we love working with this depth of approach. We don't want to work with just the outer game. We want to work with the outer and the inner. And I start to find them working in different combinations with each other because they want to take new, deep things to the market. And we're starting with them to innovate products for us, but also to take out into the world. Because the world is hungry for different leadership. The world is absolutely hungry for different leadership. I'm sure you find the same. And so the question, could I have the Menti, please? The question I think we all have to ask ourselves who are responsible for leadership development is how fit for purpose is your organization's approach to leadership in your current reality? Leadership is situational. The leadership required has got to fit the reality you're in. So how fit for purpose do you think your approach to leadership is? Significant gaps is the first brave person. Largely, that's good with small gaps. Totally fit for purpose, awesome. What leadership approach? You know, and this is the thing, what leadership approach? Sometimes companies have become, I've found, so tactical about leadership development that basically we're just going out and buying programs randomly. So I think that is an issue sometimes. 61, anyone else fancy a play? There's 100 of you or so. It's all anonymous, I should have said that. We're not going to kind of say, Udemy people are really not happy with their leadership. Woo! Okay. All right. Interesting. Interesting. So there are gaps for 39. What's that? About kind of half, just over half. So I think it's a big conversation. You talked about the community and the importance of learning people to get together. I think this is one of the big conversations we need to have. Is the leadership development industry fit for purpose? Are we guessing what we need? Well, we're getting what we deserve probably. Until we change the conversation about what leadership is, we're not going to change the marketplace of suppliers. I think that marketplace wants transformation. So I think it's a conversation we can have today. Thank you very much. I'm out of time. It's been really lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.